Alright, what is up guys? I am back with another deck profile. This time I'm going to be taking a look at Phantom Knight after the new support that was released in Chaos Origins. And I have had so much fun with this deck. I am a big fan of Phantom Knight. Some of you may know this, but most of you probably do not. Me and this strategy go back a long way. So I know I shouted out in the last video Hawk's Nest Gaming, the locals that I go to, and as I help them get together a special tournament for their 5th anniversary since they opened. The very first night that I went to go play at Hawk's Nest back in 2021, I played Pure Phantom Knight back when the last wave of support was relatively new and the deck was kind of relevant back then. So we've had many different iterations of this deck. Unfortunately, I was a little bit late to the party. I was never one of those PK Fire Burning Abyss type players back in 2016. I missed the boat on that one, unfortunately. But I really fell in love with Phantom Knight after the Legendary Hero decks and the introduction of Rusty Bardiche. I think Rusty Bardiche is my favorite Link monster in the entire game, gun to my head. And I used him quite a bit in like 2019 with the Danger Lunalight deck to set up the Azathoth turn skip with Time Thief Redoer, and then with the Lunalight Orcus deck where you can pivot your normal Orcus combo into Rusty to set up some Fog Blades for additional interaction on your opponent's turn, and just crazy stuff like that. So always been a huge fan of this strategy. Then we get to late 2020 and the Phantom Rage era support comes out, and I had a lot of problems with that era, but I did play Phantom Knight back then. And then in 2021 we had the Adventure version, and I played that a little bit as well, but didn't really like it as much, put the deck down for a while. And now finally here in 2026 with Chaos Origins, we have yet another wave of support. And when I first read these cards, I was like, okay, these are cool. We now have like a better normal summon than Torn Scale, and we have some really cool extenders, some nice new tools, but I didn't feel like it really changed a whole lot. And it doesn't really add much of anything new to your end board. You're still trying to make like Rusty and set Fog Blades and set up Dark Requiem, Xyz Dragon. And now we can do a Rank Up Magic launch line that can float into like Evil Swarm Ophion and crazy stuff like that, which is pretty powerful, but it's not like that much different from what the deck was already doing. So I initially wasn't really that impressed. And then I actually played it, and wow, do these new cards do a lot. And really what it does is every name gets to every other name, and it extends through interaction like crazy because there are so many extenders and so much recoverability. It allows you to go second pretty well, and allows you to recover after your opponent has interrupted your plays through points of interaction, and your opponent never really knows where to stop this deck. It's one of those where you can tell they don't know what the new cards do or haven't read them, because they tend to, use their interactions on things, and then you just keep playing and they look at you kind of confused and frustrated. And that's then one of the things I really loved about this, was how well this played, going second and through boards with its own engine. I thought that was crazy. This was like a deck I was not afraid to lose the die roll on, unless it was like Teller Knight FTK, which did happen at locals, but we'll get into that. So let's go ahead and get into it. This is a pure version. It is not optimal because I only have one copy of Dominus Impulse and Dominus Spark respectively, and a lot of people are playing those each at 3 in this deck. So there are cards that I'm playing in multiples that you may not see in multiples in other lists, because I don't own all of the non-engine I want to play in this, but those non-engine cards are extremely strong. This is also just like a weird self-indulgent thing where I kind of want to flex on some of the nice rarities I have here. So if that's something that you think is cringe, you can keep it to yourself. I'm not going to really go into it that much, but this is more for me anyway. So let's go ahead and get into it. I do plan on doing more different versions of this deck. So I've seen people play like Mitsurugi versions, and then obviously there's like Orcus versions where I really do want to make the Orcus version, and I really want to try a Raid Raptor version as well, which is probably going to be the least viable of all of them, but I do want to try it. So one day we'll do that, but this is a pure version for now, and I do think this is a pretty defensible way to play the deck, and it is pretty competitive with the current meta, at the very least on like a tier 2 level. So we have 3 of the new Phantom Knight Decayed Cloak, and 3 of the new Phantom Knight Doom Sorlet. So these are fantastic starters. The Doom Sorlet is a free special summon from hand if you control nothing, and then it sets a Phantom Knight spell trap directly to the field, which is usually the new trap. The Umbrage Veil, which lets you make a instant rank 3 or link 2, and the Decayed Cloak lets you reveal another The Phantom Knights card in your hand to special it, and on normal or special it adds a Phantom Knight from deck to hand, which is, they also both have graveyard effects, but this guy is now the best normal summon and over Torn Scale, even though you're usually specialing him. You can go through the majority of your combo without using your normal summon, and your normal summon is usually reserved for if you get interrupted, or if Torn Scale ends up being the best normal summon in certain instances if you open these guys. But a lot of times you're able to use Torn Scale's discard and his revival effect without normaling him, just because of how these combo lines work. But yeah, I would say that this card is probably the best. It's hard to say. I mean, both of these are really, really crazy. We want to see both of them over the course of our combo, and they each let you get to the other. So if you open with this guy and not another starter, you can overlay for the rank 3 Malevolent Scythe, the new one, and special this guy out of the deck and then get his effect off. If you special this guy, you can add this guy, or you can send him over a combo. There's so many different ways of getting to each of them. Pretty much, I'm not going to really show off combo lines in this video. I may do it later, we'll see, but pretty much every name gets you to every other name in this deck, but these are the best starters and the ones you want to see. So we're playing 3 of each. It's also really cool that, like, in terms of the new support, the Decayed Cloak is the only one at high rarity. He's an ultra in the core set, and he's also dirt cheap, so getting the new cards for this support is very, 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 very easy. And if you don't already have a Phantom Knight core lying around, pretty much every other card in the deck is available at, like, common, with the exception of Rusty Bardiche. So you can get the whole deck for extremely cheap, minus some of the non-engine, like the Dominus cards. And nobody really cares about this guy because of the other support in Chaos Origins. People are more so interested in, like, the Rolad stuff and stuff like that. So that allows this deck to be very, very cheap and affordable. I was very happy about that because I just happened to have all the old Phantom Knight cards lying around, and some of my friends at Locals just gave me their Decayed Cloak because they just didn't care. We're still playing 3 Torn Scale. I think that this is actually worth playing maybe at 2 or even fewer. I know some people that are playing only 1. It's not a bad normal summon as long as you have a card to combo with it, but typically what happens is if this guy gets sent from deck to graveyard and we have Boots in graveyard, we banish Boots to add Wing, and then we trigger him in a new chain to revive himself, and then we discard the Wing to get his send from deck to graveyard. So it does not minus us at all. It gives us perfect value, and the Wing is an additional extender there. So Torn Scale is incredibly important, but not as important as he used to be. But there were a lot of hands at this most recent Locals where I did open this guy and not the other 2 starters, and it still ended up being fine. We have 3 Boots as well. This guy is still absolutely worth playing at 3. You want to see this in your opening hand if you can. If you don't see it in your opening hand, you can search it off of Decayed Cloak, specials himself from your hand if you control a Phantom Knight, and you can banish him from the graveyard to add a Phantom Knight spell trap. And this goes without saying, but you want to be careful, of course, about the naming conventions, because some cards let you add a Phantom Knights card, and some cards let you add the Phantom Knights card. And typically, the cards that are the Phantom Knights are the monsters, the rank up spells, and the traps that become monsters. That's usually one of the ways of telling, but cards that are just traps, like Sword, Wing, Fogblade, are just Phantom Knights. So it's a dumb thing. I'm sure that translation made a little bit more sense in Japanese, but this one specifically says spell trap. So you're usually adding either Wing to be discarded, Fogblade to be set, Fogblade to be discarded, or the new rank of magic spell, which we'll talk about, is usually what you're adding off of this. But again, the special is crazy because just, again, the normal summon of Decayed Cloak lets you get this guy, or if you have this guy in Decayed Cloak in your hand already, You can special the Decayed Cloak and then special this guy and not even have to use your normal. Because you have to reveal a the Phantom Knights card in your hand to special Decayed Cloak, you probably want to go with this guy anyway in your hand because it's not giving your opponent any additional information if you just turn around and summon this guy immediately after the Decayed Cloak resolves. But that's up to you. So now this is going to be a little bit more of a controversial choice. So I'm actually currently playing 3 Cloak. After testing with this, I think that 2 is actually optimal. I think you do want to play 2. You do not want to play 3. And I would cut the 3rd one if I had more copies of the Dominus cards, like I said. So I stuck with 3 for the time being. It is the worst one to have in your opening hand. It does nothing if you normal summon it. It has a very powerful effect when banished, and I think over a grind game, over multiple turns, you do want to have access to that ability to search anything. So you do want to play 2, but I don't think you want to play 3. I think that is pretty much how I feel about it, although some people would disagree and tell you to only play 1. And if it's a hybrid build like a Orcus build, you're probably only playing 1 anyway. But card was insanely strong. Send him off of Torrent Scale, sent him off of Cherubini, sent him off of Rusty, etc., etc. Very, very powerful card. The attack boost is also not completely irrelevant. It actually did help me close out a game in testing. And then I'm on 1 of Gloves and 1 of Staingreaves. I think these are defensible. Some people have cut 1 or even both of these in certain lists. So Gloves seems like the worst name, and I do think it is like probably the worst name objectively, but it does have its corner cases often in combos, especially if your opponent is negating your stuff with interaction or just generally interacting with you on your turn. You want a way to be able to foolish Fogblade or Wings for an additional extender, and Gloves is a way of doing that because you can usually only send it's a way of sending any like Phantom Knights card from deck to grave instead of just a monster. So it's a way of getting those additional trap based extenders in the graveyard. So I think it's defensible for that, especially when you go through all the other names. If I have all the names in rotation as well, and I can add one from deck to hand, like off of Cloak, or if I access Decayed Cloak later in the combo, like if I opened Doom Sorlet or Torrent Scale and I get Decayed Cloak off of Malevolent Scythe, this might be the guy that I search because he's an extender from hand. Him making himself a level 4 is not terribly important. And I cut the card that would have been synergy with that. I'll talk about that later. But you can also, again, banish him from the graveyard, a special Phantom Knight from hand. And so if you do have like a regular Ancient Cloak clogging up your hand and you get this guy in rotation, you can banish him, special that guy, and get it out of your hand as another body. So I do think this is defensible, but these are probably the most cuttable depending on what versions of the deck you're playing. But because we're playing pure and I do want that grind game, I am keeping both of these for now. I would not change this. And that's it for the Phantom Knight names. We have a couple of hand traps, just the most important ones. Obviously, we have the 3 Ash and the 3 Fua. Most of our other non-engine is in Spells and Traps. Also, I'm playing my Good Luck Ash. Look at that misprint. It's so terrible. Yeah, love these playsets. They're, pretty much mandatory. Fua for losing the die roll, and Ash for negating Fua, and, other things as well that it can continue to negate to this day. And as for the monsters, in the Spell and Trap lineup, we're on very few spells. So we're playing one of the new Rank of Magic spell, the Requiem, and one of the launch. So this Rank of Magic lets you get to Dark Requiem, Xyz Dragon, hence the name. And this one lets you get to your extra end board piece, which is usually Evilswarm Ophion. And the other one people play is Exo Sister Carmel, because you can't normally make her in a regular generic sense, but you can bypass her summoning conditions in a deck like this with this Rank of Magic spell, and she is a monster negate. I'm currently only on the Ophion, but we'll talk about that. This card is crazy. We're not playing the other Phantom Knight Rank of Magic, the the one that's a quick play that lets you. But that one that lets you like banish names to rank up. I do like that one. I think it's pretty powerful. But I would only probably consider playing that if we manage to come up with a Raid Raptor version of the deck, because in the Raid Raptor version you can get to Ultimate Falcon pretty easily off of that card, because you can just keep banishing names and ranking it up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. ranks until you get there. But this one is an extender and a rank of magic spell, so it can special summon a Phantom Knight name from Banish to the field and rank up your Dark Rebellion into Dark Requiem, which is crazy. And you generally will search one of these off of Rusty usually, and the other one off of Malevolent Scythe, because when you make a Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon, Malevolent Scythe triggers its other effect and adds a rank of magic spell to hand. So usually getting both of these as part of your combo if it goes off. Foolish Burial I think is a crazy starter in this deck. It's also like a kind of a must negate from your opponent. I think it's generally pretty good Ash bait. If it resolves, you're probably getting to Cloak, which gets you to any starter, so I think this card is too good not to play. Saw it a lot of games, loved it quite a bit. Same thing with Rhoda. I need to find my a secret rare copy. This regular rare from King's Court is not looking too great here, but yeah, Rhoda, again, just add any name. Yeah, it triggers Droll, but we can play under Droll fairly well in this deck. I didn't get Drolled at my last locals, but I'm pretty confident in our ability to play under Droll, because most of our effects are sending guys from deck to grave and then banishing them from the graveyard. So we can play under Droll much more easily than we can play under like Shifter. Deck cannot play under Shifter at all, but luckily I don't think that's a concern for the current format. 2 Droplet and 1 Talents. I want to play a 3rd Droplet. I think, again, if I were to cut the 3rd, really I think this is kind of indefensible. Like, I think I should have been on 2 Ancient Cloak and 3 Droplet, and I don't know why I wasn't. I think it might have been something as stupid as I couldn't locate my 3rd secret rare, and just ended up going with the 2 and running out of time to fix the deck before locals. But I do think this is indefensible. I think the Droplet is crazy in this deck, considering that most of your effects trigger in the graveyard and by banishing them. And if you're going second, it's another really great way to not only shut off your opponent's board, but make sure that your starters resolve, because if your opponent goes to negate them, you can send them with Droplet to ensure that they resolve in the graveyard when they're already active in chain. So Droplet's versatility, being able to set it going first for additional interaction on my opponent's turn, or activate it into a board going second, I think it's really good right now, and I think this is a very, very good deck to play Droplet in for sure. And that is it for the spells. On to the traps. We have a couple of in-archetype Phantom Knight ones. The Umbrage Veil, the Wing, and 2 Fogblade. Some people are only on 1 Fogblade, and they're not even really worried about setting it to the field. They're more so worried about the extending properties of it, being able to banish it to revive a Phantom Knight. So it does the same thing that Wing does, but I do like 2, because typically if you get Fuwood, your game plan for Fua is to try to get 3 Phantom Knight names on the field and like hard make Rusty. And so you give your opponent only 1 draw. You can find both of these with Rusty's inherent effect and with Boots' effect. So you have 2 monster negates, and then you can, if like this is engraved, you can banish it and revive a guy. As long as there's a way to like have the traps engraved be like quick effects to revive things and play a little bit on your opponent's turn. Because again, like when you use one of these to revive something like with Decayed Cloak. Decayed Cloak is special summoned and it triggers, letting you add another name. So that's kind of your Fua game plan from what I can tell, which it doesn't sound great, but it's okay. So I'd fully defend playing 2 Fogblade. But typically you're not even setting this as part of your end board unless you hard draw one or you hard drew one of the other back row search targets, because if you see this at all, you're sending it to the graveyard as an extender. Wing is usually the one we always send to graveyard as an extender, because its on field effect is not particularly useful compared to Fogblade. But Umbrage Veil, the new one. So Umbrage Veil, it's basically just a better version of Shadebrig. I was on Shadebrig and I cut it because I was planning on using Shadebrig in conjunction with Staingreaves to make Time Thief Redoer, because as just like a fun of, because Time Thief Redoer is one of my favorite Xyz monsters, and as a throwback to earlier versions of the deck and other builds that I've played Rusty Bardish in. Ended up cutting it because I knew it wasn't all that good and I needed the extra deck space. So Umbrage Veil is a better version of Shadebrig. It summons itself as a monster, and the only criteria is that you need to have a Phantom Knight on your field or grave. So it's basically always live. It doesn't conflict with other traps being in the graveyard. If you've gone through, like if you're going second and you've already gone through like Imperm and Dominus Impulse rather, you can still activate this if it's set to the field. Unlike Shadebrig, where if you use those trap-based hand traps, Shadebrig can no longer summon itself on the same turn that it's set, which is really annoying. So it's better than that for this reason. It's a 3, which is what you want more times out of not now, and it has a graveyard effect which lets you quick Xyz summon. Not anything too good, but again, if you were to do your combo under Fua, let's say you have these engraved somehow and you have like one in the field or something like that, and you're like summoning monsters back to the zones that Rusty points to, and you shotgun this on your opponent's turn, make an Xyz monster in the zone that Rusty points to, and pop one of your opponent's cards as an extra bit of disruption. Not one of the better graveyard banish effects. I should also talk about, because I didn't mention it, I thought it was going to come up but it didn't, I want to talk about the graveyard banish effects of these guys, because they're very important. So this one, when you banish it from the graveyard, lets you increase the levels of 2 of your levels or ranks of 2 of your Phantom Knights by 1. And then this one lets you treat a Xyz monster's rank as a level. So there are times when you get interrupted, or your Malevolent Scythe is like not doing anything, and all you have is like a negated Malevolent Scythe in another body. You can use this to turn all of that into a Break Sword and continue to like pop and revive and keep playing and stuff like that. So that one is a little bit more obscure. I didn't think it was going to be all that useful until I like played the deck, and it actually ended up being pretty useful. But this one is mandatory because it's the most reliable way you're going to make a rank 4. You have to go through this effect to make your 2 guys level 4s to make Dark Rebellion. And that's the only way you're going to be able to make Dark Rebellion without the assistance of Break Sword to pop itself, summon the 2 guys back as 4s, and then overlay for rank 4. You can still do that, but it's a little bit more of a thing you do into an established board than a thing you do as part of setup. So if that makes any sense. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about those really quick. And these are all the in-archetype traps that we play, and I think they're all extremely necessary. The last traps we play are all non-engine, so 3 Imperm, and then again, I'm only on 1 Dominus Impulse and 1 Dominus Spark. You definitely would play more of these if you had them. I just don't, and I'm not particularly interested in spending the money on them. So they both overperform like crazy. They're both extremely powerful cards. And then Imperm supports Impulse, because if you have a trap engrave, it's slightly more powerful. So I think this package is really good, but you could probably cut down on some of the redundant copies of some of the not so good monsters. Again, cut a Ancient Cloak, cut a Torn Scale to play more of these. I think that's objectively correct. But yeah, that's it for the main deck. I think it is awesome, and I would only change those things I've already mentioned. Now on to the extra deck. So for Link monsters, we're on Cherubini. So when you get to 2 bodies through any of those starters that I mentioned, sometimes you'll be compelled to make the rank 3 Malevolent Scythe, and most people that will show you Phantom Knight combos will tell you to do that, because the Malevolent Scythe lets you special summon 1 out of your deck. So if you didn't start with either Decayed Cloak or Doom Sorlet, that one gets you to the one you're missing and lets you extend further. And you need Malevolent Scythe on the field eventually to be able to search the Rank Up Magic spell. But there are a lot of instances where I prefer to go into Cherubini when I have 2 bodies, and Cherubini kind of lets you insulate against some disruption, because the monsters it points to can't be destroyed by card effects. You can also protect itself from being destroyed by card effects by sending another monster you control if it's as a replacement effect, if it's threatened to be destroyed, which I think is extremely powerful. I think Cherubini is a ticking time bomb as far as it being a problem for the game, if I'm being honest. I was having this conversation with some people at Locals about the sort of inevitability of Cherubini's power. So, card's very good. The other thing is the materials that would be under Malevolent Scythe, if they have graveyard effects, if they are stuck under the negated Malevolent Scythe and there's not a way to, like, get that guy in the graveyard, you are circumventing that problem by just linking off the two materials for Cherubini instead. And that way, if something does happen, it gets negated or whatever, then the two materials that would have been under the Malevolent Scythe are in the graveyard anyway because you link summon instead of making a rank 3. So when I see people consolidate all their resources into an Xyz monster and it's the only card on their board and they don't have an extender, I get a little bit concerned. I'm like, I think that's a very obvious choke point with your deck. And if you're not playing around that, you're probably going to get punished for it. So there was a lot of times I made Cherubini first. I wasn't always going straight into Malevolent Scythe unless I felt like I had a really good line. It was a lot of times Cherubini first. And I think that just kind of playing with Cherubini on the field is like a really safe way to do that. So love this card. Very, very good. Can't say enough good things about Rusty, obviously. My favorite Link monster in the game. The send from deck to grave and the set from deck to field is the same effect, and it's not cost, which is a little bit unfortunate, but I think if it was, he'd be even more powerful, because the send is most of the time what you want, but you also really do want that set from deck to field. You want the Fog Blade, you want the Umbrage Veil, you want the Rank Up Magic spell. A lot of times you're getting the normal spell Rank Up Magic spell, and then you're getting the quick play one off of Malevolent Scythe when you make Dark Rebellion, but obviously this guy is mandatory in a Phantom Knight deck. We're playing IP and SP. Usually you're making IP as part of your end board, and there's lots of cards that let you get an additional body back on the field, such as Shaman Knight, and the Rank Up Magic spell, or the Traps in Grave. You can banish those on your opponent's turn to revive a guy. So you always have material to link with IP for. And just, extra disruption on your opponent's turn. I think it's still a pretty powerful package all these years later. Now onto the Xyz monsters. I'm playing 2 Malevolent Scythe. I actually have never made the second copy in a duel before, but I do think it's probably correct. If you are playing a long grind game and you're able to make this guy and get one of your best starters out of your deck, like your Decayed Cloak or your Doom Sorlet, it's probably worth it. And then again, when you make Dark Rebellion Siege Dragon while this guy's on the field, he searches Rank Up Magic spell. So one of the new cards. I'm glad it was a cheap, low rarity, super rare. This guy was bulk for so many people that opened the set, so it was so easy to get plenty of copies of this guy. So very, very happy with that new card. I'm playing 2 Breaksword. Breaksword was really good going second. There are so many lines in which you can use Breaksword to extend with. If your opponent does not have a card they control, but you don't have a way to do like your full combo, you can just summon him into the zone that Rusty points to, and Rusty can pop him, and you can still revive the 2 materials and make a rank 4 to make Dark Rebellion if you're trying to make Requiem or something like that. But yeah, also him not being a hard once per turn is crazy, because there was a time where I made the one, my opponent negated it, and I was able to make the second one and still pop the same monster I was trying to get rid of with the second copy. So 2, I think, is very defensible, and it still ends up, I think it's a more strong card now than it has ever been before in the strategy, because of the implications with reviving the materials and everything. And then we got the one Shaman Knight, random TCG exclusive card that they added for this set, and I think this guy is weird. It's a very hyper-specific card designed to help this wave of Phantom Knight support. So it's really weird that they made this, and the way it works is so hyper-specific. It really makes me feel like it was tailor-made for the Phantom Knight deck, because it attaches a banished trap to it as material, and then it can detach materials to special summon back a monster whose level is a dark monster whose level is equal to the material you detach. So if you make him with 2 materials, you attach a third. You always have the banished trap because of Wing or Fog Blade, and then you get another body on the field, and you leave this guy with 0 materials, which is important for the Rank Up Magic spell to get him into Ophion. So really weird the way this card works. And it's such a niche effect that it tells me that it was really tailor-made for this wave of support, which I think is really cool. We have Raiders Knight, obviously, for ranking up into Ark Rebellion, the card that wins the game all the time. And then we have the actual Xyz Dragons. We have our Dark Rebellion, our Dark Requiem, and our Ark Rebellion. Very happy to have the original secret rares of all three of these. Although I would love to get the ultimate or the ghost rare of this one, but wishful thinking for sure. These cards are crazy, obviously. Dark Rebellion doesn't really do anything on its own except for trigger Malevolent Sight to add the rank up magic. The cool thing about Dark Requiem is that it is not a once per turn. It's not even a once per chain. It's a monster negate for every material that it has, as long as it has Dark Rebellion. So it's not just one monster negate, it's 3. So this guy is potentially like an Appaloosa almost. And then also the fact that if you somehow get stopped on your way to setting up the Rank Up Magic launch for Ophion Lime, you can go through one of your negates with this guy and revive the Malevolent Scythe or Shamanite in the graveyard or whatever, even like Breaksword in the graveyard, and it will come back to the field with no materials, which gives you an opportunity to quick launch that guy up into Ophion. So if you didn't get that line fully assembled, once you've negated something with this, he also just randomly revives an Xyz monster. So this guy is insane. This guy wins a lot of games, obviously. If your opponent does not have a way to stop this effect, it negates everything else on the field, adds all of its attack together, and usually ends up hitting for like 12k or more. But you want to be careful and not make this guy unless you have a game shot. He can't be destroyed by card effects, but if your opponent is playing something like Branded, which I did play against Branded in locals, you want to be careful they're not just going to like fall into Valbaz, fuse this guy away on their turn if you don't kill them all the way. So you got to do the math kind of ahead of time and make sure that he's actually going to be a game shot. And there's other ways to OTK without him. So there were times where I had like Dark Requiem plus Rusty plus a Breaksword with Gloves under it, and Gloves gave it 1,000 more attacks. It was 3, 6, 81. So that's another way to kill without making this guy at all. And then we have the evil card, Evil Swarm Ophion. And I'll be honest, so far this card has kind of underperformed. It feels kind of win more. It's definitely a fun gimmick and a thing that your opponent has to respect when it comes to playing against this matchup. So it cooks, in theory, it cooks Branded. It cooks other fusion decks like Draco Tail, stuff like that. And it is good against some of the other decks I played against, because I played some random stuff. Like I played against like Galaxy Photon, which has like a lot of the main deck guys that are level 8 that they can't summon, or I played against an Earth Machine deck where they can't summon any of the 5s or any of the 8s or any of the 10s, and so it was good in those matchups. But matchups like Cool Tuna does nothing. It stops Harmonia, but like it doesn't really do anything against Xyz-based decks or the Link-based decks either, so it doesn't work against every single deck. And so I get why some people put it in the side and they put Exorcist or Carmail in the main, or vice versa, and side it out, but I'm still kind of experimenting with that. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that yet. And then the last card in the extra deck is Zeus. I have so far not made this guy, but we'll see if that continues. I think in theory it's still really good, especially because we're playing multiple Malevolent Scythes and multiple Breakswords. But I may cut this in order to fit the Carmail in there, maybe put Time Thief Redoer back in. I think this is probably better than having Time Thief Redoer. I think just having this as an option, because there's also ways in which you can, like, let's say if you turn the Malevolent Scythe into a level with Decayed Cloak, and then you overlay Shamanite and attach a bunch of material, there's a way that you can get a Zeus with a lot of material. So it's, in theory, it's good. It didn't really come up in my recent playing of this deck. So, but that's the list. I feel really good about it. We'll talk about the side deck very briefly. The side deck is probably not optimal, but every card in here did see play, so it seemed like it was pretty good, but it's probably not super optimal. For monsters in the side, we've got 2 Droll, 2 Bestials, and a Santa Claus, and all these came in if I was going second against a combo deck or a FTK deck. So sided in these against the Tellarknight FTK to try to stop them, and then sided in these two and this against Branded, which was pretty good. So all of these were pretty powerful. They did really well. Would definitely keep that as it is for the most part. Santa Claus as a one of is a little bit weird. Maybe I would play more of that or cut it entirely. Who knows? I was going to be a little bit silly with it with the board breakers, so I would play 3 Raigeki and a Feather Duster. I didn't want to play Thrust in this because I didn't think there were that many good Thrust targets except for these, and I wanted to play other cards in the side deck. And Lightning Storm, I just feel like people are playing around a little bit too much, so I wanted to just kind of try this and kind of circumvent the possibility that somebody was going to play all their stuff in defense. And again, Branded does that a lot. A lot of their boss monsters have like the same defense as they do attack, or they just have really high defense, so they just put everything in defense and they play around Lightning Storm. So, and this did come up. I did get to resolve this a couple times, and it's obviously pretty strong. So, that was kind of just a silly attempt at something, and seems like it was okay. This did not come up at all last local, so I was going to try non-fusion area to cut off Branded and Draco Tail and Invoked, and it did not come up. I didn't think it was all that. There wasn't really a time when I was going first against Branded where it felt correct, and they can pop it pretty easily with Fallen and the Virtuous. I didn't get matched up against Invoked, but I think if I did, I would have played this, and I think it would have been okay. But just some specific targeted hate from my locals, and we'll see. I mean, we'll see if it ends up being correct. I don't think it's actually all that good, but I want to have fusion hate because I hate fusion decks typically, even though I'm planning on playing around with Shaddoll pretty soon. And then the last play set are these. So I would side these in going first against decks I knew had crazy board breakers, and it was well worth it. There was again, I played like a Galaxy Photon player, which was wild, and he had Tachyon Transmigration, which felt really crazy, and also the Neo 107, which like shuts off everything on your board and prevents you from activating anything. So I wanted to have Solemn Judgment for that. This card did win me a game. And these were also like extra end board insulation, so I think these are definitely correct. But yeah, that is the Phantom Knight deck. I had a lot of fun with this. I am going to keep playing it. As far as the other decks you can expect to see from me pretty soon, I'm playing around in Genesis with Shaddoll. I have so many Shaddoll cards lying around from old waves of support and the newest wave of support in Battles of Legend that I want to make like a advanced constructed Shaddoll deck. I want to make a Shaddoll invoked deck. I want to make a Genesis Shaddoll deck. I want to make like all different types of hybrid versions of that. So right now I think the one I'm the most passionate about is the Genesis Shaddoll deck because of the recent points adjustment. They just put Winda at 100, but they brought down the points of a lot of the other things. And so I think that's the next deck I'm really going to really test and hammer out and try and maybe do a video on. And then I want to do some other versions of this. I want to make Phantom Knight Orcust, and I want to make maybe the Mitsurugi Phantom Knight and the Phantom Knight Raid Raptor potentially, even if that one's not nearly as good. And then I want to play around with Lunalight. I just made a video about the Legendary Arc 5 decks, and Lunalight has a new card, which probably doesn't change the math on that deck very much at all. But it does give me some fancy new rarities to play around with. So I want to play around with Lunalight in Advanced Constructed, but also in Genesis and Common Charity. Because like I talked about in that video, there were some people playing Lunalight with 0 copies of Liger Dancer and just making it a rank 4 plus Leo Dancer OTK style deck, which I can really get behind. So thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time.